Plot summary of Birdsong by Sebastian Faulks. Birdsong starts in 1910, when Englishman Stephen Raisiford goes to the French city of Amiens to learn about making textiles for his British boss. Stephen's job is to watch over René Azaire, the owner of a factory. He lives with René, his wife Madame Azaire, and their two children, Lisette and Grégoire. Stephen soon finds out that the textile dyers in the area have started a strike because of low pay and bad working conditions. Even though René doesn't hire any dyers, his own workers are upset that new technology might make their jobs obsolete. René is worried about a large-scale strike, so he doesn't pay much attention to his life at home. One day, Stephen finds Madame Azaire in the garden and learns that Lisette and Grégoire are not her children. Their real mother died just 2 years ago, and Madame Azaire is René's second wife. Stephen is interested in René's wife, and he falls in love with her when he sees her delivering food packages to the striking dyers and their hungry families. At the same time, Isabelle, who is Madame Azaire, is also interested in Stephen. Isabelle is stuck in a loveless marriage with a husband who beats her. She gives in to his obvious advances, and soon they are having a passionate affair. Stephen and Isabelle meet often in the Red Room, a forgotten bedroom in the servants' quarters of the Azaire's home. Their love grows until Isabelle finally agrees to run away with him. In a small French town, they live a quiet life until Isabelle gets pregnant. She is embarrassed and confused, so she leaves Stephen without telling him about the baby and goes back to her family's house to be with her beloved sister Jean. Stephen is upset, but he doesn't try to find Isabelle. He waits a year, just in case she comes back, then goes to Paris. He sometimes helps a person who makes furniture, but his life is empty and has no purpose. When World War I starts in 1914, Stephen is glad to have something else to do. He joins the army, and thanks to his high level of education, he quickly moves up the ranks and is soon a lieutenant fighting on the Western Front in France. Stephen finds comfort in his friendship with a fellow soldier named Michael Weir. The British trenches are full of death and decay, and each day brings unspeakable horror. Stephen is a long way from Isabelle and the Red Room, and he doesn't think about her very often anymore. Every day is a struggle to stay alive, and Stephen's hatred for his German enemy and the men he is in charge of keeps him going. Stephen's health is hurt by the war, and he almost dies of an infection after being hurt in a tunnel collapse. But he has to keep fighting. He thinks that the war is nothing but an experiment to see how low men can go, and that it will never end. Stephen's story is told at the same time as Elizabeth Benson's, who lives in London in the late 1970s. Elizabeth is single and very strong on her own. She is 38 years old and already runs a successful clothing design company. She is also in love with a married man. Even though her life is hard, Elizabeth is happy with it, but she feels like something is missing. One day, she reads an article in the newspaper about the anniversary of the armistice of 1918. It piques her interest. She knows that her grandfather was in the war, but she doesn't know much else about him. Even though it happened too long ago and in France and seems too big and far away, she can't stop thinking about it. She remembers seeing some of her grandfather's old journals in her mother's attic, so she decides to do a little digging. Elizabeth finds 2 journals. One is written in a strange code, and they don't tell her very much. Still, she has a feeling that the war and her grandfather's role in it are important to her, even though she doesn't know how. Elizabeth stops at a World War I memorial in Albert, France, on her way to Brussels to see her boyfriend, Robert. She finds a huge arch with British names on it in an empty field. She finds out that each name is that of a soldier who fell in the surrounding fields and was never found or was thought to be dead. Elizabeth is shocked by how big the arch is and how much death it means. Even though she knows a little bit about a few key battles, she has never really understood how big the war was. She cries, "No one told me." In 1917, the war is still going on, and Stephen keeps fighting. He's back in Amiens, but a lot has changed since he left. German soldiers once lived in the city, and then it was bombed, so the landscape is so burned that Stephen can barely recognize it. After meeting Jean by chance, he finds out quickly that Isabel is still in town. When he goes to see her, he finds that she is scarred and unable to move. When Isabel tells him she loves a Prussian soldier named Max, she breaks his heart even more. Stephen knows he has to let her go, so he heads back to the front lines. There is unimaginable violence, and most of Stephen's platoon is killed by enemy fire when an attack goes horribly wrong because of bad planning. Stephen is physically and mentally worn out. His new friendship with Jean helps, but it's hard for him to keep going after an enemy sniper kills Weir. Stephen is very ashamed of the war and what they have done in it. In the last days of the war, a German bomb blows up his tunnel and traps him deep underground with a dying miner named Jack Firebrace. Stephen gives up and decides to die. Just when he thinks things can't get any worse, enemy soldiers come and save him. When the guns stop firing and the birds start singing, the men hug each other. In 1978, Elizabeth goes to London and asks her friend Bob to help her figure out how to read her grandfather's journals. She sets out to learn more about her grandfather, and she starts with the men who served with him. She finds his commanding officer, who is still alive and well at age 88 and lives in Scotland, and he leads her to Brennan, a broken and forgotten soldier who has been living in a home for veterans for over 60 years. Elizabeth is happy as can be when she finds out she is pregnant with her lover's child, even though it seems like Robert will never leave his wife. She loves Robert, but even more than that, the child fills a deep void she didn't even know she had. When Bob finally figures out how her grandfather wrote in code, Elizabeth finds pages full of unimaginable pain and suffering, but she also finds closure and hope. By going back in time, Elizabeth finds out the real story of her family and learns a new way to think about the war and what it cost people. Elizabeth has a son, whom she names John after one of the men in her grandfather's journals. She is ready to face the future, now that she knows what happened in the past.
About the author. Sebastian Faulks was born in the market town of Newbury in Berkshire, England, to Peter Faulks and Pamela Lawless. Faulks' father was a highly decorated soldier and judge, and his uncle, Sir Neville Faulks, also served as a judge in the High Court. Faulks attended preparatory school in Newbury and studied English at Emmanuel College, Cambridge. After graduating, he worked for a short time as a teacher before becoming a journalist for the Daily Telegraph and its sister newspaper, the Sunday Telegraph. Faulks began writing fiction early in his career, and in 1984 he published his first novel, A Trick of the Light. In 1986, he became the literary editor of The Independent, an online newspaper, and continued to write, publishing Birdsong to critical acclaim in 1993. After the success of Birdsong, Faulks quit working as a journalist and turned to his fiction full-time, quickly becoming an important figure in contemporary British literature. By the end of 1993, Faulks was elected as a Fellow of the Royal Society of Literature, a society founded by King George IV in 1820 to award literary merit and talent. In 2002, he was awarded Commander of the Excellent Order of the British Empire, the British Order of Chivalry, for his contribution to literature, earning him the honorific CBE. In keeping with the themes of war and history in Birdsong, Faulks sat on the Government Advisory Group for the commemoration of the First World War from 2013 to 2018, where he advocated for public remembrance of the Great War. Faulks married his wife, Veronica Yulton, in 1989, and the couple went on to have 3 children together. Faulks and Yulton currently reside in London, England.
Hope we summarized it fully and you liked it. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so that we are motivated to create more videos.